Hi, this is Darren Drew from D. Drew Guitars. I'm making a fretboard here for a Martin guitar. Somebody took the fretboard off, don't know why, but so I'm making a new fretboard for it. So what I first wanted to do is get the thickness or the width here and back here correct, because that's the important part, and I'll show you why in a minute. And in order for me to get the edges along here straight, I use my table saw with sticky tape and my fence. Go like this back and forth and count how many times I'm doing it, reverse it, and then count how many times I'm doing it again. That way it comes out consistent. Do that on both sides until it comes the proper width. And this came up just today, but I had this all prepared, say earlier in the week. But today I came and I checked, and this fretboard was warped like this. So just from sitting in the garage, so I had to redo my to make sure that the bottom of the fretboard is perfectly flat. And I'll get a pencil and I'll make marks all the way down it, and then sand it on here. And you do the same thing. Go back and forth. Watch out not to sand your fingertips off with the sandpaper, and then count how many times you go back and forth. Then reverse it. And this will take care of it getting into a form of one way or the other. And then so you count the same amount this turns this way until all the pencil marks go away. And then you check it with the straight edge to make sure that it comes out really flat. And with the straight edge, this is a perfect straight edge here. And so what you would do is hold it here and hold it up to the light, and then you won't be able to see any light coming through it. That's when you know that it's flat, straight, and just like you need it. So now, there's a bunch of stuff involved in this, but for the preparation of this, I use a flat, hard sanding block that's 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever, to make this nice and perfectly flat too, because you want a very good glue surface. They both have to be perfectly flat. So there's a lot of things to take in consideration for this fretboard. If you notice here, you can see how the binding is bent, how far this is pushed back. This is due to the string tension over the years. I'm kind of shocked to see it has moved this much. This is probably like a 90s guitar. But the whole neck has moved back that far, which is a lot according to your intonation. And intonation is what it boils down to is string length compensation. Let me go back to here. You can see that this fits in here perfectly, where I have to push it in like this. The back I have so it's perfectly flat here, and it's right exactly where the nut line is here. So I have this the correct size. We'll come up with another problem with this in a moment. But so string length compensation is you measure with your ruler from the nut to the 12th fret, and then from the 12th fret to where the saddle is. And with, I've looked up what the fret should be, the spacing should be here on this fret scale length already. And, it may not match what I did on this one, but I'm making this fretboard with the accommodating how far back the neck has moved. So the intonation will be correct once I get it done. If I would have put on the correct scale length, the intonation would be off, and then you would have to fill in the saddle slot and recut the slot. Too much work. So I made this fret scale length 24 3/4 to fit where the neck is positioned now. And so what you do is measure from the nut to the 12th fret, then the 12th fret to the middle of the saddle here, and it should be exactly the same, but then you want to add 2 to 3 millimeters more because of the string length compensation. So I have that done. Okay, and on this particular guitar, it came with the fretboard being cut off here, and because I can see the marks here. But if you notice how this is sticking out here and here, if I left it straight across here, it's going to look very sloppy and you're going to see how far back the neck moved. I don't want to do that because I want to make it nice and clean looking. So I'm going to take it here and have it rounded to match the sound hole. It'll just make it look much cleaner that way, even though it didn't come stock that way. If this was an old vintage Martin, I would probably do it that way. But before I would do it is I would try to push this back into place. But this isn't that old of a Martin, so I'm not going to worry about that. And pushing this back into place would be a tremendous amount of work. I'll guarantee it. Because this happened over a period of years, and I'm not going to spend years to get it back into place. So I'm leaving this right where it is, because it is nice and solid. So now another thing you notice is, okay, I'll just hold this here in place, but Martin did not have their guitar neck straight on the edges. I know my neck is perfect, or my fretboard is perfectly straight because I did it on a perfectly flat surface on my table saw. But as you can see, the wood is sticking out all along both edges, but not at both ends. So that just shows how not straight the neck is compared to the fretboard that I know is perfectly straight. So what I'm going to have to do afterwards is, once I have it glued on, I will taper this in at an angle so that the top of the fretboard is still straight, because your strings have to align up with the edges correctly, and I'll fade it in to the neck after it's done and glued on. And another thing you can see right here is that this has a big crack in it. I will fill this with glue first. See right here, there's a big, this part comes out even. You can see it, it's coming out. I'll fill this in with glue first. That way it's full of glue, and when I go to clamp it, it will fill in that crack as well. Okay, and so what I pre-do is, I know that the fretboard's fitting the body perfectly to where all I gotta do is touch my finger here, and I know that my nut width here is gonna be correct. So I have my clamping apparatus. Here's another thing I did too to make sure the thickness of the fretboard was correct. I measured a bunch of fretboards, but I got this is a 12 string, so I got a 12 string nut, and what I did is put it on here, and it looks like it's going to be about correct by the time I glue the fretboard on, that the nut height of a stock original nut will be correct once I get the frets in. So that's another way for me to verify the thickness of the fretboard. Okay, so once I have this, I will put glue down, but we'll see that. I have this like this. I will get my wood blocks and cowl, and one's going to go here, one's going to go here. I'll use these type of fretboard clamps actually that are designed to clamp on a fretboard, but I want to use more than just 2 of these. I want to use some C-clamps and a caul like this that will go underneath the bottom side of the neck, which is rounded. So this is rounded. So then I can clamp this on. So I already want to have my clamps almost preset for the width that I'm going to be clamping. Just makes it easier once you have glue going on. So, and another thing I want to prepare is a couple wet rags to wipe up the excess glue that's going to be dripping out, because there's going to be a lot dripping out. And if you notice, my blocks here are on the inside of my fretboard. That is so I can clean up the glue once it's squishing out, and I can make a nice, good, clean surface. You want to clean off all that glue now, because later it's much more difficult. So, okay, and I already have my dot markers pre-drilled where they're going to go. I would have glued them in, except I don't have the glue for that right now. So I'll wait till after it's done being dried, and then I will do that before I radius the fretboard. Okay, so now we're going to get some glue, and what I use is Tight Bond, you know, wood glue, because this is wood, so we want to use wood glue. And you know, when you're doing like building a neck, you want to tape off in the center so it doesn't get into where your truss rod channel is. This one I really don't care about because it's a sealed truss rod, back here where the threads are, I do care about that a little bit. So I'll just put in some glue, and more is better than not enough by all means. And that should be plenty. I'll spread this around to the edges. Like I said, I'll leave a little bit of wood showing here just because I don't want it to squeeze into where the threads are to, not allow the truss rod to be turned. You want to make sure that there's enough glue everywhere because, it just has to be a great glue joint on something like this. So I'll spread the glue out evenly on the wood. And believe me, too much is better than not enough. Because this is one of the major parts of a guitar is your fretboard, how it's attached to your neck. It's so very important. So this has to be absolutely flawless, actually. Okay, so there we go. I have glue everywhere like I need it to have. And then this crack, I'll pull it apart a little bit. I'll try to force in some glue in there. I'll even do it from the back side here. Touch this back up. See how the glue is like avoiding some of the places? I'll make sure it's touching, the glue is everywhere. Okay, my wet rags. So then I have my fretboard. I'll slide it back into place exactly where it's supposed to be. I'll get these type of clamps put on here first because this is going to mainly hold the thing in place. A lot of times when you gluing or doing a glue joint, the glue makes it turn into like ice so that it will slip around on you. But with these clamps here, they're made for a fretboard, so they will make this go into the center all by itself. That's what they're designed to do. Screw this on tight. I want to get this as far back to the heel as I could possibly get it. Tighten it up. You can see glue starting to squish out already, but that's okay. That's kind of what we want. And it's good back here, and it looks good up here, so I'll tighten this up. And then I will get the other clamp, and I'll do the same thing with it at this end. I may wipe off the glue in between here just to stop it from dripping all over. And these clamps aren't very much. I got them from Stu Mac, which, whatever about them, but they do work well for this. Obviously, this one's shorter than that one because they break, but these are very good at centralizing the fretboard on the neck. Poke it through both sides, and then I can put the nut on it and start to turn it. Both ends poking up. Flip this around because you can see that this is concave for the neck shape. And then I'll tighten this one all the way up. And then I know both of my ends are right in the right place with these type of clamps. And these clamps do put enough pressure on it to hold it down, but I'm going to have to put on more clamps because I want it to be nice and tight everywhere. Slide this pretty much to the end. Make sure that this is in the right place. You'll see this has got to go back just a touch. That's why I do it perfectly flat on this end. Then I know my nut is correct because I've already cut it that way. Tighten this up, good. Tighten this one up good. Wipe off my excess glue. Cleaning up the glue now is so much easier than doing it later. I'll keep cleaning the glue in a bit. So now I have two clamping blocks, and I use these specifically for my clamps not to leave marks in my fretboard. And I have one for here. So I have a C-clamp that I'll put in, and the C-clamp will only go so far back because of the neck block. That's why I use the block also, is because it distributes the pressure from the clamp all the way down to the end of the block pretty much. So I'm trying to get this in the center. Clamp it down nice and tight. And later I will get this excess glue off of there. Now I'll put this one on with some C-clamps. Oops. First I need to put my bottom cowl on here that's nice and curved. Try and get this in the center, the block in the center as well. Clamp it down nice and snug. I don't want this thing to fall off my bench. I'll get another clamp, and a lot of times I like to reverse my clamps to make it easier to turn them. Try and get your clamp in the middle. And then I'll put one more clamp on it. That's what I'm going to do probably at the top just to make it easier. Put it at the very end of my cowl down on the bottom. Try and get it in the middle as well. Tighten this all the way up as much as I can pretty much tighten it. All three of them. Tighten this one up again. Tighten this up again. Tighten this one up again. Now I will clean off all my glue, especially from this nut area, because it's got to be flat in there for the glue to, for the nut to be glued in there properly. So I'll just take a screwdriver and scrape it right across there and clean up all this glue inside here, because we want the nut to go in nice and easily, have a nice good flat surface. I'll do the same thing over here where it's on the body. Use a screwdriver just to get all that excess glue off of the, the cracks. Make it nice and clean so we have no glue to clean off after we're done, or after we're done unclamping it. Do the same thing over here, with the screwdriver edge. You want to do it gently so you're not scratching the body also. And then try and clean off all this glue that